So this is pretty much the last tutorial I'm planning on putting together for this sort of sequence on creating simple motion graphics and that sort of stuff. I do want to cover a bit of background information so you kind of know why I've done everything the way I've done it and that sort of stuff. But anyhow, getting into Blender. So this is a really basic object. I'm going to switch into edit mode with the tab key, and I should have turned on the screen key so you can see what I'm doing. So there they are now. So tab, you can switch between object and edit mode up the top here, but in edit mode. Now I can press 1, 2 and 3 on the keyboard, which gives me access to these three keys here to switch between vertex, edge and face mode. And what I really want to do is just basically open this up into a shape. So in this case it's E to extrude, and I've just accidentally tapped E twice, so I'll just Control Z to undo that. And I'll move my screen keys to the other side so you can see what I'm hitting. Then this face, extrude, let's say 2 units. That one, extrude 2, and I'm just tapping keys on the keyboard at this point because it's just easier. Extrude 2. So you've got a basic red cross kind of setup as one possible example. That one should have been 2, but I don't know what it should be now, so let's have a look from above and see if I can match it up. Grab, X direction only, and that should be about there, close enough. And you get some shapes that are simple like this one. If I go back out of edit mode into object mode, I'll just move that out of the way. You've got access to some fairly simple geometry, including the torus, or donut as I prefer to call it. And when you add a symbol, you can actually get some effects on how it's all laid out. That looks fairly complicated, but the reality is that you've just got positioning, what it's rotated like. This is major and minor segments of the donut, and it gives you major radius, minor radius. So the major radius goes to there, and the minor radius goes back in those two sides, and the number of segments gives you sort of how smooth it will eventually look. So if I want to make this a thicker donut, let's go for 0.5 there. There, it's nice and thick, and that could be a symbol for something or an object. And most of the other time you don't need to modify these properties for what we are doing. So, that could be a symbol, and in the final tutorial I do give, I've got the Deathly Hallows that I created beforehand and we just put together, and that's where I do use some of these object properties. So if I add just for example a circle and then drop the vertex count down to 3, you can see I get a triangle. 4 is a diamond, or close to a square, 5 pentagon, so on and so forth, up until I think it was at 16 or 32 I think. So then that's a smooth circle. And these simple flat pieces of geometry can be extruded up as I did with the cross symbol over here to make it more interesting, because normally you don't see this sort of stuff. And I better make sure I'm in object mode so I can delete this thing because I don't need it. So that's the basics of creating geometry. So this one I'm actually going to use for my animation. I'll just drop it in the center. I can then go through the same process as before of colouring it in and all that sort of stuff to make it interesting. You'll notice that this donut that I have here doesn't have a material added, but it's just a simple add a new material and then give it a colour of some description. Red donut and blue cross, say, whatever. And these symbols can be combined in interesting ways to make your motion graphics as such. Oh, cat's at it again. So, the other thing that I've done for some of these videos, but not all, is I've changed the background color to black. When you do this sort of stuff, you generally can be mix matching this with programs such as Adobe's Premiere Pro or other video editing software, and most of them like it to have a black background as a way of going, well, we'll key out that color so it becomes transparent and we can mix and match it with what we're doing. The other way to look at this is also to, when we actually go to the output settings, which is these things here, and I don't know if I've talked about this, but basically we can control how big it is in terms of video quality, and we can go all the way up to 4K here. If I click on that one, it doesn't like me. Yes, it gets to large numbers in the corner of its size, or all the way down to really small TV. Sorry for the minor glitch there. Yeah, can it get all the way down to small TV sizes as well? So PAL is the Australian standard, NTSC is the American standard, and you can actually define whatever that you like in here by adding new presets at the bottom, and you can adjust those numbers in here and here for the X and Y coordinates because it's a 2D image when it's finished. But the interesting part is when we go down to the output formatting. Now, with what the video formats we've got here, we've got JPEG, AVI RAW, and FFmpeg video. None of these options actually have transparency, or what they refer to as alpha layer, not as it stands. But if we go back to PNG, we've got black and white, RGB, which is red, green, blue, and then RGBA, or red, green, blue alpha. And the alpha gives us our transparency, so we can use that. But however, the problem is that we're creating a whole bunch of stock images, and that then leads to lots of images that you've got to store and deal with, but it does make it adding stuff to the 3D, to the video editing a lot easier. So yeah, the alpha channel is the kind of useful thing to be able to superimpose images on top of other things, like if you've got a fancy logo that you want to use in video editing and that sort of stuff. And this is where this whole motion graphic thing is becoming round to being effective. But if just jumping quickly to the tutorial sheet that I've got, when you look at this, when you're in edit mode, you can actually make use of the extrude function 1, 2, 3, which I've already shown you. You've got Control V, Control E, and Control F, which gets you into vertex, edge, and face modes respectively. And that allows you to bring a lot more options into what's going on. So if I just change into edit mode here, I've got a face here, so I can go Control F and bring up the face menu. This is identical to the menu up the top here, and allows me to add additional options. So I can insert a face here, which allows me to get a thing like that going on. So I'll just pop that out for a weird little sideways angle or whatever. So that as a set of options allows more control over what's going on. The face option, so if a face has been emptied, and I'll just use X here and delete that face, I can look at that and go, oh, I need to join all this face together. So I'll just go to the edges and grab that edge and that edge. Whoops, wrong edges. Those two edges in there, I think. Whoops, too close. And I'll roll it around, I can see what's going on. And those two edges, I've selected the whole outline. I go F to face it. Now, if it's a lot of edges put together, it will form an n-gon, which is a multi-sided object. Or it will, but best to use 4 edge to make neat ones. For 4 edges for neatness in terms of your topology. If I get out of this and just quickly over here, I'll get this out of the way, add in a circle. No, not one of those, just a straight circle. It's unfilled, go into edit mode, so there's all the vertex, so I can see it's there. If I fill that with an n-gon, it gets a multi-sided shape. And if I wanted to actually make this into a, let's say, something a little easier to work with, I can actually use one of the edge functions to bridge edge loops. It won't deal with it because it's got at least to have 2 edge loops, so let's just go that one. Hold down the right buttons, select those 2 vertices and those bunch of vertices. I want to bridge those 2 together, so I can go edge, bridge edge loops, and it does a straight edging for me. And then I can start doing other stuff to this object if I wanted to. But it's really just there to give you an idea of what that function does. And finally, there's beveling edges. That's really nice with, say, this object here. If I wanted to bevel particular edges, let's say across the top to make it neater. So I'll select edges and go edge, edge, around the outside. And I want to bevel those, just Control B. And all of a sudden I can bevel the edge. If I roll the mouse button, I can get smoother and smoother beveling the more I do it to make my object more interesting. Now if I want to accept this, it's a left click. If I want to cancel, it's a right click. The final one is the ring cuts. Now ring cuts are a great little tool because it increases the complexity of your topology, and you can see that line dancing across there to add more detail. So if I then want to scale this in a direction, I can make it kind of big or whatever, bigger, smaller, whatever I want to change to it. So that covers most of the basics that I wanted to talk about with terms for this, the 6th tutorial of basically designing your own simple logo and that sort of stuff. It's really up to you to come up with what you want to do. I've just given you a couple of examples. In the next tutorial, I'll go into a bit more detail about animating the Deathly Hallows from Harry Potter, but that's just, it's neither here nor there. So yeah, make the most of it and enjoy.